everyone, Kelly here, and I'm just realizing that I think that I have worn this sweatshirt in like every other video that I have recorded in the last couple months, but I just love it. So you probably just think I wear this all the time, and yeah, I pretty much do. I don't know if you've ever seen the whole shirt. It's Cookie Monster. It says "Me Love Books," and it is super cozy. Yeah, I will link down below where I got it. I got it at outofprint.com, and every once in a while they put their sweatshirts on sale. So I got it when it was on sale, so I did not pay the full price for it, and it is super cozy. So they have lots of bookish sweatshirts. I'm not sponsored. I just buy a lot of bookish merchandise from them. So anyways, on to the video topic today. So a couple of days ago, I was watching Elliot Brooks, and she put out this video where she was talking about authors that she had read, and she thinks they were going to be new favorites, and so there were other books that she wants to read now. And that video made me remember that I had done a video like this that I called Read One, Want More, and I had done it like 2 years ago, and since then, I have collected more authors that I read one of their books and just decided that I'm going to try a lot of their books, that I got really excited and maybe bought several of their books or put a bunch on my TBR after reading that one. And so I just want to share those with you today. So I have, I think, 11 authors to talk about. Since it's middle grade March, I'm going to start off with my middle grade authors. And the first one is hennacon, and I read Amina's Voice a couple years ago and I really loved it. It was a 5-star read for me. This is a contemporary book about a Pakistani American girl, and the novel is just about family and friendship and kind of like reconciling having your family's culture and blending it in with the culture of people around you. And there was a lot about religion and that playing a big part in her life and her family. So since I really loved Amina's Voice, I picked up more to the story, and this one is a Little Women retelling, and it's a modern time, and it's with a Muslim family, and so I'm really excited. I'm hoping to read that this month for middle grade March. Also this month, I'm hoping to get to the sequel of Amina's Voice, which is Amina's Song, and it comes out on March 9th. I'm not sure if this video will come out before or after that publication date, but it is coming out this month, and so I'm really excited to kind of see what happens with Amina next in her family. The next author I want to talk about is Kacen Callender. I had read King and the Dragonflies last year, and it was my favorite middle grade of 2020. I absolutely loved this book. It is a contemporary, and so I wanted to go and pick up some of Kacen's backlist, and they had another middle grade book that I'm hopefully reading this month, which is Hurricane Child. And from what I can tell from reviews of this book, it's going to be very similar to King and Dragonflies in the fact that it'll cover a lot of harder topics with family and identity and things like that, and so I'm really excited to be trying out this one. And I know that Kacen Callender also has a lot of YA titles, so maybe once I finish this one, I could try out a few of their young adult novels too. And the last middle grade author I want to talk about is Jonathan Auxier, and last year I read Sweep, The Story of a Girl and a Monster. This is a historical fiction book that blends in some fantasy elements, and I just really loved it. I thought it was a heartwarming, touching story, but also had some hard things happening at the same time. So after reading and loving that one, I picked up The Night Gardener, and I think that I'm going to love this one even more because it seems like it's going to have a lot of creepy vibes, which just really draws me to it. Like even the cover itself just makes it really enticing for me to read. So I am very much looking forward to picking that one up. And then I have a couple authors that I had read some of their short fiction, and I really enjoy their short fiction, so I want to pick up some novels by them. So back in January, when I was reading a lot of short fiction, I had a short story collection by Daphne du Maurier that I picked up called Daphne du Maurier's Classics of the Macabre. And this was 6 of her short stories. And I gave this collection 5 stars, which that is pretty rare to give like a short story collection 5 stars, because I enjoyed every single story in this book. Like all 6 of them were either a 4 or 5 star, like really good. So I felt like as a total, I enjoyed it, a 5-star amount. And so I definitely want to try some of her novels. I own My Cousin Rachel, so this is one I definitely want to get to in 2021, since this is on my 21 books to read in 2021 list. So this is happening this year. I also want to read Rebecca at some point. So I'm actually cheating a little bit with this one because technically I read Rebecca, but I read it like I think 15 years ago. It was like right after college, so it was around 2004, and I just didn't like it, but at that time I was not reading anything like classics or anything slow or gothic. I was very much into kind of like pulp thriller kind of books, and so this kind of gothic, slower book was not my thing. So I feel like I should be giving Rebecca another chance, and it almost is like I didn't read that because I don't remember anything about it, and I just remember thinking it was boring. I don't even know if I actually finished it, so I'm still saying I only read one Daphne du Maurier book and want to read more with fresh eyes now that I am older. And then the other short story collection that I gave 5 stars to was How Long Till Black Future Month by N.K. Jemisin. And I just thought every single one of these stories had a wonderful concept. Even if it wasn't a full like 4 or 5 star story, I thought every single one of them was interesting and kept me going through the whole book. And I just thoroughly enjoyed the whole collection, and I actually do want to own this collection because I think these are the kind of stories that I could read again and again and get more out of them. So I definitely want to read more by N.K. Jemisin. And actually, before I even read this short story collection, I had bought the 5th season because my husband read it and really wanted to read it again and read together. But even though I own this one already, I went out just last week and I bought The Killing Moon, and I'm going to read this one first. And because even though everybody talks about the 5th season and how it's like her best work that trilogy is, this duology has a short story that was connected to it in the collection, and it was my favorite story of the entire collection. So it just makes me really drawn to reading this book next because it is in that same world, and I think I should go with my feeling of like, I love that story so much. I loved being in that world. It was one of the longer stories in the collection, so I'm really excited to read 2 full novels that are in that. And then after I read this duology, then I'll go back and I will read the 5th season with my husband and we'll read the series together. But this one I want to get to like very soon because I was just so compelled by that short story. And next I want to talk about 2 authors that write in a genre that I didn't think I liked, which is historical romance. And each of these authors write very different historical romance. The first one I want to talk about is Mimi Matthews, and I had read a novella by her back at Christmas time, and it was called A Holiday by Gaslight, and I loved the story. Like, I almost wanted to reread it right away, and I definitely will be buying a copy of it to read next Christmas. And her books are more on the clean side of historical romance, so there is no sex in them, and I really enjoyed the way that she was still able to build tension and romantic tension between the 2 main characters and attraction and all that stuff without it going into sexual territory. And so I picked up another book by her called The Lost Letter. This was recommended to me by Tia from Tia and All the Books, and she's read several of Mimi Matthews' books. And so I went and picked this one up, and I'm really excited to read that one. And then the next author I want to talk about is Courtney Milan. And this one was a real surprise to me because I have not really enjoyed historical romances that are on the sexy side. And I'd read several different authors and just decided it wasn't the genre for me. But I wanted to give Courtney Milan a try because I've heard that she had a little bit different way of writing her historical romances, that she included some more serious issues in them and kind of a more feminist tilt to them. So I picked up actually 2 novellas by her in January. So this is a little bit of a cheat on this one because I've read 2 of her books, but they're both novellas and I read them both in January. So I'm kind of counting it for this one because I read them basically back to back. And I had read Mrs. Martin's Incomparable Adventure, which was a female-female romance of 2 older ladies. And I thought that one was really excellent. So then a couple weeks later, I picked up The Governess Affair, which was a prequel to a series, and I just absolutely adored this one. I loved the way that she built the characters' dialogue and their like witty banter and all that stuff. So I was just so excited to continue the series that I ended up going out and picking up the first book in the series. So that was the prequel, and this is the first actual novel in the series. And if I love this one, I'm probably just gonna buy all of Courtney Milan's books because yeah, I just really enjoy the other 2 that I read. And then next I want to talk about authors that I read one of their books and then I went out and bought several of their books. So I own like multiple books from these authors after only reading one of them. So the first one is Jennifer McMahon. I read The Night Sister a couple years ago, and it was just kind of the perfect creepy book for me. This was a historical fiction kind of mystery book and took place during different timelines with several different perspectives. It was like creepy to the level where I had to like keep reading it and had to finish it before I went to bed or I wouldn't have been able to sleep. but on the other side, it wasn't like gory or gross or anything like that. So it was kind of just the perfect kind of scary book for me, because I just don't like any kind of body horror or anything like that. So I figured I was pretty safe with this author. So I went out and picked up a couple more of her books. The Winter People, I've heard a lot of good things about, and I've heard it's very similar to Night Sister in the fact that it's historical fiction and has a couple different perspectives that we're following. So this is one that is now on my 21 books to read in 2021, so I definitely want to get to that. And I also picked up Burntown, which I think this one is not historical fiction. Like, I think this is set in modern time. This one does not have as good of ratings, so I'm going to save this one for a little bit and read a couple others first. I also have an audiobook arc of her upcoming novel, The Drowning Kind, so I will hopefully be reading that towards the end of March, since that comes out in April. And I think this is another one that is set in modern time and is more on the thriller side. So I have 3 books by Jennifer McMahon that I am really excited to read. And the next author I want to talk about is Wilkie Collins. And I had read The Woman in White in, I think, 2019, and I absolutely loved it. I just adored that book. I need to get myself a copy. I had like a really old, battered mass market paperback, and so now I want to get myself like a nicer copy of it. But basically, as soon as I finished that book, I went out and bought more Wilkie Collins. So I bought The Moonstone, which I believe is more of a detective novel, where Woman in White was more of a gothic fiction. And then I own The Dead Secret, which I'm not for sure what this one is about. It says a classic work of crime and mystery, so maybe it's also another detective novel. So I'm looking forward to reading both of those at some point. And then the next author I want to talk about is a little unique, because I bought 3 of his books all at once without having read any of them, but I have since read one of his books, which makes me more excited to read the other 2 that I own, and that's Matt Haig. I read Reasons to Stay Alive at the end of last year, and this is one of his nonfiction books about mental health, and I really love this. And even though I know it's not one of his fiction novels, I could tell like from his personality that came through in this, and he also narrates the audiobook, that he has this sense of humor that really aligns with mine, where he uses humor to brighten up subjects that are harder. And so I am really looking forward to reading the 2 other books I own by him. I have The Humans, which is the first one I want to read, because this is on my 21 books to read in 2021, and this is a sci-fi book about aliens. And then I have The Radleys, which I believe is about maybe suburban vampires. I think that's what it is from the description. So I definitely am excited to read both of those books after kind of getting to know his personality more in his nonfiction. And then the last author I want to talk about is one that is very popular, and I don't know why I waited to read one of her books until last year, but that is Octavia E. Butler. I read Kindred in 2020 and absolutely loved it. It was one of my top 5 books of the year. This was kind of a historical fiction, sci-fi, time travel kind of book, and I loved it. I loved her writing very specifically. Like, she didn't have a lot of exposition, and she really like moved through the plot really well, but then also had rich characters, and I love that mix. And so I went out basically right after reading that and bought Fledgling. And I've put off reading this though, even though I bought it right away. I'm putting off reading it a little bit because I feel like I need to be in the right headspace, because I know this has some pretty heavy topics. This is kind of her take on a vampire story. But if you're interested, look up some content warnings, because I know it has some content that I'm wary about, but I will get around to it. But maybe I'll read this other one first. And that was a short story collection that I just bought last week. When I bought N.K. Jemisin's book, I picked up Bloodchild, and I'm excited about this because this wasn't really on my radar when I started looking at more of Octavia E. Butler's books, because at that point I didn't think I liked short stories. But since then, I have realized I love short story collections if they are kind of in the genre that I enjoy, which is more speculative fiction. And so I'm excited because I think all of these are either sci-fi, fantasy, speculative in some form, and I'm very excited. I think this only has like maybe 6 stories in it, and this is a reprint, because when it first came out, I think it only had 4 stories and 2 essays, and now it says it contains 2 more new stories. So that is one I'm looking forward to reading soon. So that's it. Those are 11 authors that I read one of their books, and I am very excited to read more by them, so much so that I have bought other books that they have written. Do you have any authors that you read one book and you're like, I know this is going to be a new favorite author, I'm going to go out and buy like all of their stuff? I'd be curious to know if anybody else does that, and I would love to talk to you down below. I'll see you next time. Bye.